So just in case you're less informed than the Megyn Kelley show, which is very hard, this is what the Trump civil fraud case was about, before you hear Megyn Kelley whine about it, and these two idiots she brought on her podcast. So Trump did a myriad of things, including multiplying the value of Mar-a-Lago by 30 times, and expanding the square footage of Trump Tower by 3 times, physical square footage, and he did that to receive many large low-interest loans, might have been one, or multiple, from banks. I think it was Deutsche Bank. This is measurable. This is not arguable. The appeals court just threw away his essentially his violation, his penalty, did so under like 8th Amendment concerns. It was excessive. They're probably right. It was excessive, but 0 judges on that court, even David Friedman, which Trump says completely vindicated him in his Truth Social post. Even he said the fraud existed, and I'll explain that in a second. But let's just listen to this.
What's more troubling to me is watching this assistant prosecutor from the AG's office make this ridiculous argument to the appeals court, talking about fraud and disgorgement of ill-gotten gains, when there was no actual fraud. Nobody was defrauded of a damn thing. There was not one.
All right, so this is 101, basic knowledge. Literally basic knowledge. You do not have to be successful in your crime for it to be a crime. And, by the way, Trump was successful. So this is not even about that. But no one was defrauded of a thing while risk-adjusted. The bank was absolutely defrauded. They gave out a lower interest loan than they would have had they known the actual risk of lending to Donald Trump as a client. Risk-adjusted, they absolutely had a loss. Even if that loss does not exist, let's say it does not exist, as long as he presented the false information to them, this is still like textbook financial fraud. All you have to have for a criminal violation, by the way, this is a civil violation, so it's a bit different. In terms of the threshold you have to meet for proof for fraudulent intent, but fraudulent intent is still a factor. So all you have to prove is that fraudulent intent. You don't have to have any kind of success, which is really all we're kind of trying to prove here. But he completely did. What do you mean no one was defrauded of anything? He provided false information. That's a totally valid thing to bring in the New York statutes, which David Friedman kind of nitpicks a little bit, but I can talk about that when they get to him.
That was defrauded from any of these lenders. And so the whole thing is just built on a house of cards. Engeron, I think, has some responsibility here, too, because if you're the judge and the trial judge, you're supposed to make sure that this kind of farce doesn't happen in your courtroom. But he allowed it, and he was a part of it. And so what I want to know is why we are allowing these judges like this and prosecutors like this to stay involved in these cases. When Tish James goes out and makes all of these public comments about how she is focused.
By the way, prosecutors being thrown out for bias is very, very rare. It's only judges. So people saying that, Letitia James, who else? Fannie Willis, Jack Smith, throw out any name you want. Really, any prosecutor ever, you could dig up any evidence. If they're prosecuting a murder case, you can say, this person is biased against murder. They shouldn't be prosecuting this case. It's that's kind of stupid. Same thing for any of these cases. Prosecutors are only thrown out if they are found to have a real conflict of interest. So they can be a close relative to the person that they're prosecuting, have some kind of financial gain outside of career prospects. It has to be very, very explicit. Judges is a bit more loose, but Letitia James, being a Democrat, that's all he has to go off of. And hating Trump, that is absolutely not enough to have Letitia James removed. And her prosecution was absolutely fair under New York law, in any kind of reasonable reading of it.
Her efforts specifically on one individual that she is targeting for political reasons, how is that prosecutor allowed by the judge to remain on the case? Because if that's not bias, expressed bias, I don't know what is.
Phil, how many times did we have conversations on this show about Fannie Willis? And
again, if this person was prosecuting a murder case, you could say he's biased against murder. You can be biased against people who have done bad or fraudulent things. That's not a reason for prosecutors to be thrown out. In general, they shouldn't be doing that. They should be arbiters of the law. But prosecutors are allowed, as long as they don't breach the dam into like misconduct. That's when it gets really, like, if her bias was leading her to put a bunch of phony charges against Trump to try and, I don't know, or her case was like completely, like, flagrantly, something was super wrong with it that led to the trial judge seeing some kind of misconduct, and that's a different story. But just having the bias is not nearly enough, because we assume that with that personal bias outside the courtroom, we assume that as a prosecutor, that they can still make a fair case. We're not just going to assume that the case isn't fair. And in this case, the case is absolutely fair. The financial fraud was quite substantial. It was very substantial. This is not a minor thing. And I only scratched the surface. There's a ton of other, 100% inflations, 200% inflations, 50% inflations of property values that he did all over the place. And people saying, like, oh, it was like a no-risk thing to begin with. It's like Trump has had so many bankruptcies. It's like that's such a silly argument. Like, you have to give these financial institutions a fair assessment of risk.
Number of motions that she was subjected to because she made out-of-court statements that were against Trump and the defense team, suggesting they were racist. They played the race card against Trump.
That's so stupid. Again, replace Trump with a murderer. Like, are you supposed to be nice to them? You get the benefit of the doubt as a prosecutor that you're going to be fair, but whatever.
And that was because she committed ethical violations that they called her out on. And then she, in defense of herself, went into a church and tried to suggest they were all racist. That became a new basis to potentially...
Which ethical prosecutors can absolutely commit ethical violations. If there's some kind of, like, backdoor financial dealing or conflict of interest that is real and provable and explicit and on paper, then of course. It's like, but your opinions are not an ethics violation. That is absurd. That is an ethics violation in and of itself, to even have that opinion that that's how law should be conducted.
Qualify her, because you're not allowed to even say something like that. Never mind campaign on the promise to get just some citizen whose alleged crimes you don't even know exist yet. I mean, that's why you say she should be disbarred. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, in a rational world, in a rational legal world, a trial...
What do you mean? So, unless Trump is convicted of something, or there's a civil ruling, I keep saying convicted, like this is a criminal court, this is not a criminal court. Trump should be convicted in criminal court, but that's a different topic. It's a civil court. So if there's been no ruling, then it's like, who's going to do that ruling then? If she's running on, like, oh, I'm just going to do a fair application of the law, then what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that.
Judge would not allow either of these prosecutors to stay in the case. A simple motion saying, look, Judge, this is what she has said publicly about my client. She's targeting my client. And in a criminal context, if you're talking about, targeted malicious prosecution, that's one thing. It's the same principle over in the civil case. You can't.
A trial judge will only throw out targeted malicious prosecution if you can find some kind of misconduct. Again, how do you prove that this is targeted and malicious? This stuff is insane.
Just use the awesome power of the state to target and prosecute specific persons with whom you have a political beef, and it's just so crazy that we're here in August of 2025 having this discussion, because this is like Law 101. It's almost like people...
It's not just Letitia James. The whole panel found there was fraud, you idiot. Like, everyone but David Friedman, who in his remarks that were supposed to vindicate Donald Trump, he accidentally admitted that there was fraud. Because he said that, I'll just explain the Friedman case, because I don't want to pull it out any longer. Friedman said, you know what, the statute that Letitia James is referring to refers to fraud against the public, when businesses or other institutions or corporations do some kind of misleading actions for their own personal gain. This can be prosecuted under fraud, right? And Friedman said, it's so stupid. He said that banks are more competent than the public, which the law uses the word public. So banks are not the public, which is it's absurd. Their commerce is inherently public. Like, anyone can know this. This is incredibly stupid. He's basically saying that bank fraud does not exist. Incredibly incoherent, but
forgot law that
didn't tie it together. He admitted that the fraud happened. He just didn't think that banks are viable fraud victims.
learned in law school, or they were absent the day they taught law in law school. Engeron needs to be off the bench. He has no business presiding over trials in New York. Letitia James has no business bringing, of all things, mortgage fraud cases now on behalf of the state of New York. These people need to be out of their jobs. They need to be dealt with. They need to be dealt with severely. And honestly, I'm at the point where I don't know that the appeals process is enough. It's not enough to just say, all right, Engeron, you and your $500 million judgment, you're done. No more of that. That's not.
Zero Eighth Amendment discussion. It's all the fraud. This is about the Eighth Amendment. The $500 million fine was probably silly, right? All we needed was the ruling to have what we wanted against Trump. That's all we needed. He doesn't even tackle that. Like, he doesn't talk about how all the legal personnel in this court completely disagree with him. Besides David Friedman, who accidentally disagrees with him. And if he read his ruling, he'd also see that. Like no one agrees with you.
Enough. We need to have an appellate process that can send a message to prosecutors and to judges and say, look, you can't do this. There's rules against it, and these things have teeth.
What would you say to somebody that hasn't tried therapy before?
Just ask yourself if what you're doing in your life right now is working.
Yeah,
the
whole
process
like
was
this.
abusive. It was intended to be abusive of Donald Trump, who has just reacted in a very, very long Truth Social post. I'm going to read you just my producer's pulling of the highlights. Total victory in the fake New York State Attorney General Letitia James case.
I have never seen any conservative actually say the facts of the case. Like, go over the facts of the case, and then you can do your little circle jerk. Like, this is what you have to describe first. What happens, then you can make your conclusions. Like, same thing with Russiagate. I've never seen a single conservative tell me why. Crossfire Hurricane. Why can I not remember that? Tell me why Crossfire Hurricane started. What specific event started the FBI's inquiry into Crossfire Hurricane? I've never seen anyone say that. And as soon as you describe that, all this Obama, Clinton stuff, it falls apart completely.
I greatly respect the fact that the court had the courage to throw out this unlawful and disgraceful decision that was hurting business all throughout New York State. By the way, that was something verified by Kevin O'Leary, who was saying the chilling effect.
Kevin O'Leary, such a trustworthy source. That, oh no, if I inflate my square footage by 3x, and if I inflate my property value by 30 times, I might have to pay a fine. It's like, that's been the law forever.
This is going to have on companies from wanting to do business in New York. Sorry, that was my own aside. Others, continuing here with Trump, were afraid to do business there. The amount, including interest and penalties, was over $550 million. It was a political witch hunt in a business sense, the likes of which no one has ever seen before. That's really true. Trump's prone to hyperbole, but that's actually true. Going back to him, every single dollar was thrown out, even the penalties imposed on us by the corrupt judge, one of the most overturned in history, Arthur Engeron. I am so honored by Justice David Friedman's great words of wisdom, which should be read by everyone. I would also like to thank the court for having the courage to make this decision, which is already going down as one of the worst.
Trump didn't read it. Trump doesn't know anything. He probably oh, this is the one guy who wanted to say that, not that I was innocent. This is very different. This is like Aileen Cannon. Her ruling didn't say Trump was innocent on the document cases. She said that Jack Smith didn't have the basis to bring the case. Same thing with this. It would have said Letitia James didn't have the basis to bring the case. Not that you're innocent. That's why the David Friedman piece doesn't say Trump is innocent or anything. It just says there's no basis here because somehow banks can't be defrauded against. They're not valid victims. So buy into that if you want, but it's absolutely absurd.
Business persecutions in the history of our country. I mean, that's just great, and honestly, good for him. And here's a little from David Freeman's opinion that Trump cites. He writes, the Attorney General in her 2018 election campaign for her current office repeatedly promised the voters that her top priority upon being sworn in would be to bring down President Trump and his real estate empire. Whatever one may think of President Trump's character and policies, Section 6312 was not enacted for the Attorney General to use as a stick with which to beat the opponents of her political
Yes, it was. This is not debatable.
party. I mean, Will, from a
The political party part. This is about adjudicating the law. It's about political party. As I explained, it's very hard to get prosecutors thrown out for their politics. It's actually impossible. I should reframe that. It is impossible because even if you are liberal, you're prosecuting some like KKK member or something, right? You're going to be given the benefit of the doubt to not do misconduct. And if you do misconduct because they are on the rightward end of the political spectrum while you're on the leftward end, then you will be thrown out by the trial judge. It's about action here. It's not about trying to find, like, if we're prosecuting a Democrat, we have to find someone exactly aligned in their political spectrum. Like, no, that's the prosecutor. The judge makes those decisions. And you can be more picky about replacing judges and saying there's bias there. But prosecutors, they just prevent the facts. They just present the facts. And they can do so in ways that are unethical, of course. But you have to prove that. You can't just say they have different politics.
From a judge on a New York State appellate court, that's like as vicious and sweeping a condemnation as you can get.
Yeah, and I think it's really revealing of, this is sort of why President Trump is president now. I think if you go back to 2023, this case, along with so many of the other obviously unjust prosecutions of him.
Oh my God. So many of the obviously unjust, again, describe the facts of the cases, and you will immediately see that they're anything but unjust. Everything that Donald Trump was charged with, right? And all the stuff he should have been charged with. Like for the 2019 Ukraine scandal, for disrupting the Mueller report in 10 million different ways. All of this stuff, like Jack Smith said, Mueller said, he would have been charged with. But he wouldn't. He wasn't, because he was president. He has immunity. So it's not just that. It's the stuff he would have been charged with. And if you look at the facts of any of those cases, which none of these people do, none of them care, then you would see that they're very, very obvious. And I wish they would attempt to provide the facts in their own twisted way, just for entertainment value. This is just super lame how they're doing it right now, just saying it was all politically motivated. It's absurd. When literally the epitome of political motivation with the Obama-Clinton stuff, clearly made up, nothing scandal, absolutely absurd. It will never see the light of day in any court ever. That is politically motivated. Kash Patel running, saying he's going to turn the FBI into the graveyard of the deep state with his list of tens of people he has on his hit list for combating the deep state, and there's no evidence against him. It's that is political motivation. There's one side that does that, and it's the Republican side only. This is not. You could say there was some bias in the excessive fine, sure, but the ruling itself, which does include the fine, of course. So I'm saying the core fraudulent findings are completely valid. But I'll end it here. It seems like it's going off the rails as we move further to the right of this panel.